Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Scott Ayres. He is a content scientist at Agorapulse. He's also co-host of Social Media Lab podcast. Scott, it's really great to have you on the show today. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for letting me come on and chat with you for a little bit.
Awesome, man. I've enjoyed some of the recent episodes on your podcast and love the take that you guys are approaching testing and looking at the data on different social media platforms. So I'm really excited today to dive into some myths that you guys have sought out to bust on LinkedIn strategies. Before we do that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what the team at Agorapulse is up to these days?
Yeah, if you haven't seen me, I've had the pleasure of working remotely for 3 different app companies in the social media management area, and got the blog for them. And so I've probably written about 2,000 blogs about social media over the last 7-8 years, and gotten to be at the top of Social Media Examiner's top 10 social media blogs 3 different times now, which has really been a great pleasure to be a. And I also co-authored Facebook All-in-One for Dummies. If anybody wants to buy an out-of-date book, feel free to go to Amazon and buy it. They're out of date as soon as they're published, but hey, I get to say that.
Right.
But yeah, for us, Agorapulse is, we can talk about Agorapulse a little bit later if you want. I mean, we're a social media management platform that lets people post and manage their online presence. Now, my project that I'm in charge of for the last year and a half is been called the Social Media Lab.
Right.
And what we do with that, and the reason we started it is our CEO, Emmerich, kind of saw that there was just a lot of blog posts out there in social media that were, theories and opinions more than anything. And, the 5 best things to post on Facebook, the top 10 this, but there was really no data behind it. And when he did write a post that was data driven, everybody, it got shared more, it got more reading, it got more searching, and people really appreciate that sort of content. And so we said, hey, what if we start a separate blog that's separate of our main one, which had, already been on the top of the list of social media blogs, and do something a little different that's focused 100% on these experiments. And so, he kind of said, hey, let's do it. Let's go for it. We're spending, with salaries and website and ads that we test, we're dedicating about $15,000 a month to the project. And it's going now we started publishing about a year ago, our first one. It took us 8 months just to finally get to the publishing phase.
Wow.
Just because we took our time to really figure out what we wanted to do and what we wanted to test.
Yeah.
How it's different from, the typical stuff that you read is, for one, we're not just always looking at giant data sheets, which is good to look at, but you don't know what anomalies you're going to find in there. Then we're trying not to give any sort of opinions about things. We're just wanting to really go through, and we actually run our test using the scientific method. So I kind of go out and say, okay, what do we want to test? Can we even test it? Because there's a lot of things that you just can't get data on. And then I put a hypothesis out there. It's my best guess based on other articles, other research, and then I start the testing and give the true, genuine data that I can, and then make a conclusion based on. The interesting thing through all this is, being a guy who's written as many blogs as I had, I was used to, popping out 3 or 4 blog posts a week. Now, I mean, it's like one a month, because we're taking so much time. Some of these tests are 6 to 8 weeks long.
Wow.
And then a lot of times I'm pulling the data manually and looking at each individual post one at a time on the organic post, because way to just look at it. I want to look and see what happened on this post and compare it to another post. And we're using real world pages and either a small business page that I actually have, our account, personal accounts, and so it's a little more usable data as opposed to those big giant numbers that no one can really relate to. So it's a lot of fun. I talk about statistical significance more than I ever have in my entire life.
Nice.
I couldn't even say that phrase, a year ago without.
Hey, it's rolling off the tongue now, so I think you're embedded in it. So that's awesome. I love this idea of really taking a data-driven approach. One of the people I've been following a lot on LinkedIn is Chris Orlov from Gong.io, and they're really taking a similar approach to looking at data of what works in B2B sales. That's another area, just like social media marketing, that you can find a lot of opinions about strategies, about tactics, about what works and what doesn't work. But when we can take real data and take a scientific approach to what's happening, you can bust some myths. You can find some strategies that are really backed by data instead of just opinion. So I love that you guys are taking this approach. It doesn't sound like it's been any small feat to kind of start tackling this. So with all that being said, Scott, let's dive into the first thing that we wanted to talk about today in a myth that you guys were trying to bust on LinkedIn to find out what really works. And that's about post types. Tell us a little bit about what you guys tested there, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the data actually showed.
Yeah, so what we wanted to see is, on Facebook, for example, which is where most people have done most of their social media marketing, there are certain post types that perform better. And typically it's, photos or videos tend to have the higher reach. And reach is that thing that, we're like dogs chasing our tails that we're running after trying to catch, and we don't do a good job of it usually. And so we were kind of curious to see, did that translate over to LinkedIn? Is LinkedIn different? And so we sought out Melanie Dodaro, who was the author of a book called The LinkedIn Code. She's, one of our friends, and she's like, I'm seeing something over here. I'd like for you guys to test it. And so we used a couple of different pages, our business page, my own personal account. We looked at Melanie's account and tested link posts, text only updates, and photo posts to kind of see which ones perform better, and just kind of put it in perspective as far as the followers on each account, or connections, as LinkedIn calls them, if it's a personal account. Melanie has about 34,000 followers, so she's not a small page, profile at all. My profile has about 4,000, connections, and our business account has about 1,000 followers. So, and these are established; they've been around for a long time. Always posting and trying to engage as best as we can. And so that's kind of how we framed it. And for me, being, I used to have a podcast called Facebook Answer Man, and I wrote a book about Facebook. So I'm, I know what Facebook and what typically works there. I assumed that text only updates, my hypothesis was text only updates would have the lowest amount of views. That's kind of how LinkedIn shows it as views, or sometimes impressions, depending on the page. So that's what I thought. I thought it would be the text only would be the lowest performing, just based on the knowledge of other social sites.
Awesome.
And then, so you want to get into the data now?
Yeah. So your hypothesis was that text only updates, as opposed to link posts, photo posts with an image or with a video, that they were going to perform drastically lower than those other type of posts. So tell us what actually the data came back and what you guys found, Scott.
Yeah, it was really, and we didn't test just a couple of posts, just to kind of, go back on that. I did 37 posts on my personal account. We did 58 on Agora Pulse, and we looked at about 12 on Melanie's. So we kind of looked at a bunch. We're trying to get averages. Our whole job really is, I don't want to just say I did 3 posts and here's what happened, because that's not a trend. And so we want to look at the biggest data set as we can.
Let's not just do anecdotal evidence.
Yeah. And so here's what we found the average view. We averaged all these posts together. We looked at the views/impressions. Again, pages show impressions, personal profiles show views. And they're basically the same thing. Why LinkedIn reports it different, I don't know. So what we found was the average views of link posts was right at, it's 5,795 for these pages. Photos was 5,998. And then text, and this number is just really stupid. It's basically 69,000 was the average views on text only updates. So, I mean,
So
just
more than
blew
10x.
away. Yeah, it was 1,000% higher, which is a number that just doesn't make any sense. And we tested. I even retested it just to kind of make sure. Because, like, well, maybe we just got lucky, And one text only post caught a bunch of attention, so we pulled that data out, and it was still right up there around that 1,000% higher, which is remarkable to me and quite a surprise. One of those things where I had to go, whoops, my hypothesis was absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
Which, fine. I don't mind saying that it was wrong, but it was quite a surprise for us to find that.
Yeah. Now, in the text only posts, Scott, was there a link anywhere in that post or a link that you put in the first comment? Tell us a little bit about, the makeup of those text only posts.
Yeah, so it varied. Most of them though were just pure text. Just like one of Melanie's was just a question. I'm interested in learning more about Blockcoin, and cryptocurrencies back when I was getting really hot. Anybody have any opinion on it? And they got like 120 something thousand views. Where a link post, a traditional link post for her, the same like a day before, only got 280 views.
Yeah. And was that link post on a similar hot topic, or was that on a cryptocurrency?
Oh yeah, it was on social selling on LinkedIn, and so it was a relevant post to her community. And same with those. I mean, the stuff I would post was, things like about our blog and our podcast and about our website. And so, and just kind of wording it different ways to kind of see what it would look like. So yeah, we try to keep it, and that's the thing too. I mean, anytime you're running any sort of experiment like this, you got to, try to take out any anomalies that you can. And we know that sometimes it's just something happens and it goes nuts. So this is why I'll try to, most of the data sets, I'll pull out the lowest performing and pull out the highest performing. That way, I just kind of have I'll at least pull out those two anomalies. But sometimes a post just tanks, and doesn't do well, and sometimes one just goes crazy. So even pulling that out, we still we still came up with the data that we saw.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's very practical for our audience to take away and see the 1,000% difference there. Just curious, Scott, did you guys test with different lengths of posts, different styles of posts? More shorter, longer form, getting close to that 1,300 character limit. Doing little list posts or doing, more story form. Curious kind of what makeup of those text only posts maybe you guys saw higher engagement with, or at least what you tested with.
The ones we tested with tended to be shorter, about 2 to 3 sentences max. I would like to test. That's another, I'll have to write that down. Where's my pen? It would be interesting to test, the short text only update versus, stuff in a blog post, basically. Update and see which ones perform. But for this test, we just kind of looked at the shorter, more conversational type posts. Typically, what you would post with a link as well. When you did a link post, you typically will give a little bit of, teaser as to what it is, and maybe ask a question or something. We kind of want to keep the text part of it as similar to one another as possible.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it didn't skew it. So that's kind of why we kept it the way we did.
Awesome.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Ayres Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Ayres was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Ayres' monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too, so head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
All right. Well, the second thing that you guys tested on LinkedIn, I'll let you kind of explain what you guys were testing for and what you found, but hashtags on LinkedIn. Really curious to hear what you guys tested for and what you found here, because, I know it was several weeks ago, there was the change to LinkedIn's feed, and I started getting, these questions, what hashtags do you want to follow? And it changed the way that stuff appeared. So tell us a little bit about what you guys tested for when it comes to hashtags on LinkedIn, Scott.
Yeah. So, I mean, another sites like Twitter, we found and Instagram, hashtags are huge. People use it to explore and find content. Facebook has never done well with hashtags. We tested that and they didn't really amount to anything. So we wanted to see if LinkedIn, if it amounted to, because LinkedIn is so different as how people are on the site and what they want to look at. And so we used the Agora Pulse page and my personal profile again and tested about 20 pieces of content with hashtags and 20 pieces of content without, posting kind of one of each of those per day. And we just put in, because I wanted us to get, we had to give a baseline basically. And so I just used one hashtag just to kind of see what one hashtag would do to a post. And so there was hashtag social media tips because it was relevant to the content, and a hashtag that I'd seen other people posting as well. And so that's what we did. And we posted either a link to our blog post, our main blog, or a link to the social media lab, kind of went back and forth between the two of them. So that's kind of how we set it up and how we tested. Now, we could have done multiple hashtags, but again, I think that skews the results a little bit.
Yeah. Trying to keep it controlled and
and the next thing would be,
variables.
The next thing might be, all right, what happens if we do 1 versus 5 or, 2 or what.
Yep.
And this is a post that, I'll have to say, if you can't find this one yet on our website. We haven't published it yet. So,
so you're getting it here first.
Yeah, you're getting exclusive information before I even get the images done for the post yet. So I just actually drafted this one last week. And so, so it's very relevant for right now. And I ran the test just like a month ago. So it's not old data whatsoever. So we found on the Agora Pulse page, we'll use our business page kind of as the first example. Impressions of those 20 posts on average without hashtags was about 61.5, where the one with hashtags was about 84.5. So impressions was 38% higher when we put a hashtag in our business post. And these are all link posts, so they're all, we didn't use the text. We wanted to use links only.
Okay, so the same type of post, the only difference being hashtag or no.
Yeah, one hashtag. That was the only difference. And we're looking at impressions, not engagement. While engagement is important, obviously, I want to look at impressions.
Looking at views and impressions.
Yeah, how is it getting, does exposure change by adding a hashtag? So that was a big difference there. And then on my personal profile, without hashtags, the views were 86 on average. The with one hashtag was 106. So about 23.5% higher on my personal profile. And then if I take those two and average them together, it comes out to about 29.59% higher impressions when we put one hashtag in the post as opposed to not even using a hashtag at all, which was intriguing to me because, that's not what I thought. If you think LinkedIn, the way they work, are people really searching for hashtags? But like you just said, LinkedIn is pushing this out there because they want people to engage. Instagram's doing the same thing. They're letting you follow hashtags now instead of having to search for hashtags. So if there's a hashtag relevant to whatever industry you're in, whether it's construction industry or, optometrist or whatever it might be, there's hashtags for your industry and they can see that based on what you're talking about, what you're posting about, what your profile says in it. And so following those hashtags, I think is going to help people a lot. So the fact that these were higher was pretty interesting to me. Now, one caveat here, even though it is higher, 29.5% higher impressions makes me automatically go, okay, I'm going to make sure I post at least one hashtag moving forward.
There's something to this.
But if I were to take it into the geeky statistical significance calculator that we actually have a guy on staff. His name's Alon. He's in our Paris office. He's a data scientist by trade. That's what he's trained for. He worked in the banking industry in Paris for years. So he's actually pushed back on us a lot, and given us our own formula to kind of work with, which is this geeky p-value and z that. It's all confused. I just plug it in and it gives me a number. But I looked at it, a lot of different ways to say, did the number of posts to impressions, are they statistically significant? See, I stumbled that time. Is it the number of posts to clicks, posts to social actions? Trying to see, could I come up with something that said, this is 100% statistically significant? Meaning, if I were to repeat this again, would I get a 95% p-value? 95% is the standard when it comes to data science, which is really high. It's really, really high. No matter how I plugged in these numbers, it came out to about 70 to 75% in that p-value, which for me, that's still a lot. That's still telling me this is performing better but I can't, put the, statistical significance stamp on it 100% and say this will happen.
That you're always going to get that 20-some% increase.
But it's enough for me to go, okay, this shows me that it's worth putting that in there, and it could increase over time. Because it's like any test. The longer we were to do this, it probably would increase because more people might start following that hashtag and be involved, looking at it on feed. Yeah. But it's a high number. And so for me, I can say that the post with the hashtag obviously is a clear winner here, as opposed to not including it. But which is as a marketer, it's such a different thing to think about putting a hashtag on Instagram, on LinkedIn. That'll be a change. You see, I even said Instagram when I said that because I'm so
just muscle memory there. Awesome, right, Scott. Right. Well, I think, two great takeaways here. One, there's obviously a big difference in the text-only status updates and ways that, our audience can start to leverage that for both their company pages and personal profiles on LinkedIn. Not as huge of an increase, and maybe, we'll see how LinkedIn's algorithm continues to favor hashtags. It's somewhat newer on the platform in the way that they've rolled it out and the way that it's being implemented. So it'll be interesting to track that there. So Scott, to take it to next steps, if people listening to this would like to follow more of what you guys are doing at Social Media Lab, either your podcast or any of the things that you guys are putting out, putting data behind, social media marketing best practices, what would be the best way for them to go about doing that, man?
Yeah, wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for Social Media Lab. You'll see a guy with, you'll see the science little emblem. That's our podcast. Me and Richard Beeson, a teammate who does a lot of our data stuff as well. He's the main host of that, and I co-host it with him. And you can go to agorapulse.com/social media lab. We kind of have our own room in our house, basically, on the website. Dedicated to the Social Media Lab, and we have fun with it. We've got a little character. It's our scientist that we call Pat. I don't know why we call him Pat. We just do. He's got orange hair and wears a lab coat, and we have fun with, our guy who makes our images for us does an outstanding job of kind of putting him in different things. And I actually, even though this isn't on video, I actually have a lab coat and an orange wig that I wear sometimes now in meetings just to be a little goofy and follow the branding a little bit more. But yeah, so look for us there. That's probably the best way to find it. And then social media wise, we just use Agora Pulse. So we're at Agora Pulse everywhere on the socials.
Awesome. Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Before we let you go today, folks, we wanted to give a shout out to an upcoming conference. The Impact Summit is coming up here in a few weeks in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Extending your increase on social media is going to be one of the topics. There's also going to be great presentations and breakouts on building your personal brand, becoming a thought leader in your space. Our founder, James, is going to be speaking at the event. So if you're interested in that, take a look at influencerinc.co/impact summit. To learn more, there'll be a link in the show notes to the event. So you can go check it out. You can get your tickets there. If you do buy tickets, make sure you use the promo code SWEETFISH, all one word, SWEETFISH, to get 15% off the price of admission. And look forward to connecting with a lot of folks there. Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/impact summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.